I met Easton 3 months after I almost quit the gym entirely. Not because I hated working out. I actually liked it. The routine, the feeling of getting stronger, the way it gave structure to my week. But the place I'd been going to before was packed with the kind of guys who treated the weight room like a competition for who could be the loudest and most obnoxious. Every workout felt like surviving high school again. So when my friend Nolan told me about a smaller private gym on the other side of town, I switched immediately. That's where I met Easton. The first thing I noticed about him was his voice, not his body, even though, objectively, yeah, he looked unfairly good in fitted black athletic shirts. Not the tattoos on his forearms. Not even the fact that every single person in the gym seemed to know who he was. It was his voice. Calm, steady, low enough that people naturally listened when he spoke. I was struggling through deadlifts during my second week there when he appeared beside me out of nowhere. Your back's rounding. I nearly dropped the bar. He smiled slightly. Relax. You're not dying. Probably. I laughed under my breath, embarrassed already. Thanks. Super motivating. Try again, he said, stepping closer. Slow this time. There was nothing flirty about it. Just professional. Focused. Still, my heart started acting stupid immediately. I adjusted my grip and lifted again. Better, he said. You've got decent form. You rushed the movement, though. I stood up straight, catching my breath. So you just walk around criticizing strangers for fun? Only the ones risking spinal injuries. Good to know. He held out his hand casually. Easton. Jace. His grip was warm, firm, quick. You train alone? He asked. Usually. He nodded toward the far side of the gym. I run a conditioning group on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Small class. You'd probably like it better than whatever this was. I looked down at the barbell still wobbling slightly on the floor. Rude. That got an actual laugh out of him. And for some reason, that tiny moment stayed with me the entire drive home. After that, Easton started showing up everywhere. Not in a creepy way. He worked there, so technically I was the one constantly wandering into his space. But suddenly he was correcting my posture during stretches, recommending recovery exercises, tossing quick comments at me whenever I looked like I was about to skip cardio. You're leaving already? I did 40 minutes. You walked on an incline and stared at your phone. It was emotionally exhausting. He shook his head like I was hopeless. The annoying thing was that I started timing my workouts around his schedule without meaning to. If I got there and his truck wasn't outside, the gym immediately felt less interesting. Which was bad. Very bad. Because Easton was exactly the kind of guy I tried not to fall for anymore. Confident. Self-assured. The type of man who looked completely comfortable in his own skin while I still felt like I was faking confidence half the time. And he was older than me by enough to make me aware of it constantly. 28. Established. Put together. Meanwhile, I still ate protein bars for dinner 3 times a week. One Thursday after class, I stayed behind stretching while everyone else filtered out. Easton was wiping down equipment nearby. You always stay late. I asked casually. Usually. He glanced at me. You always ask random questions when you're avoiding going home. I looked up immediately. Wow. You charge extra for therapy. He smirked. Then he tossed me a water bottle from the counter. Drink. You look overheated. Thanks, coach. That word did something weird to his expression. Not dramatic. Just a tiny shift. His eyes flicked toward me for half a second too long before he looked away again. And suddenly the air felt different. I noticed it after that. The pauses. The looks. The way conversations between us started lasting longer than necessary. One night after closing, I was heading out when I realized it was pouring outside. Easton was locking up near the front desk. You walk here? He asked. Yeah. He looked toward the rain hammering the windows. Absolutely not. I'll survive. You'll look like a drowned Victorian child. I laughed. That's specific. Come on, he said, grabbing his keys. I'll drive you. I should have said no. Not because it was dangerous or inappropriate or anything dramatic like that. Because I already knew I liked him too much. The drive was only 15 minutes, but it somehow felt intimate anyway. Rain against the windshield. Low music playing through the speakers. Easton driving one-handed like he'd done this exact thing 1,000 times before. You live alone? He asked. Yeah. You like it? Most of the time. He nodded slowly like he understood that answer better than most people would. When we pulled up outside my apartment building, neither of us moved right away. Thanks for the ride, I said finally. Anytime. I reached for the handle. Then he spoke again. You coming tomorrow? I looked back at him. To the gym? No, Jace. To a secret underground fight club. I snorted. He smiled faintly. Yeah, the gym. Probably. Good. There was something about the way he said it that stayed with me long after I got upstairs. That night, around midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Drink water after workouts. You're terrible at recovery. I stared at the message for a full 10 seconds before laughing out loud. Me. Did you seriously steal my number from the gym database? The typing bubble appeared immediately. Easton. I prefer resourcefully acquired. Me. Pretty sure that's illegal. Easton. Only if you report me. And just like that, it started. The texting got out of control fast. At first, it was harmless. Easton sending sarcastic comments after class. You almost died during burpees today. Or, your squat depth improved. Miracles happen. I'd reply with equally annoying answers just to keep the conversation going longer than necessary. The problem was that it stopped feeling like trainer-client communication almost immediately. Because Easton didn't text like someone being polite. He texted like someone looking for reasons to talk to me. By the second week, we were messaging constantly. During work. Late at night. Random observations during the day. One afternoon, I sent him a picture of the pathetic chicken wrap I bought from a gas station. Me. Nutrition. Easton. That looks like depression in tortilla form. Me. You're supposed to support me. Easton. I'm trying to save your life. Then, a minute later. Easton. Eat real food tonight. And annoyingly, I did. That became our thing. Him pretending to boss me around. Me pretending to hate it. Except neither of us was really pretending anymore. The gym started feeling charged whenever we were in the same room. Not openly. Easton stayed professional around everyone else. Calm. Controlled. Exactly the kind of trainer people trusted instantly. But with me, there were moments. Tiny ones. His hand brushing my shoulder while correcting my form. His eyes lingering too long when I laughed. The way his entire expression softened sometimes when he looked at me like he forgot other people were around. I noticed all of it, and it was ruining me. One Tuesday after conditioning class, I stayed late again helping put equipment away. You don't have to do that, Easton said, stacking mats near the wall. I know. Then why are you still here? I tossed a resistance band into the storage bin. Maybe I enjoy your sparkling personality. That's concerning. I grinned. The gym was mostly empty now. Just music playing quietly overhead and rain tapping against the front windows again. For some reason, rain always seemed to happen around him. Easton leaned against the counter, folding his arms. You flirt with everyone this much? He asked casually. My stomach immediately tightened. I forced a shrug. Depends. On. If they're mean to me. That made him laugh softly. Then he looked down for a second before meeting my eyes again. You know I'm trying not to cross lines here, right? The teasing drained out of me instantly. What lines? He held my gaze for a long moment. I'm your coach. The way he said it made my chest feel tight. Not because I disagreed. Because I could tell he was reminding himself more than me. I tried to play it off lightly. Pretty sure sending me insults about my meal choices already crossed professional boundaries. A small smile pulled at his mouth, but it faded quickly. Jace. Something about hearing my name in that tone made me straighten automatically. You're 24, he continued carefully. You're not a kid. I know that. But I also know how this looks. I swallowed. So don't make it look weird, I said quietly before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked up immediately. The silence after that felt massive. I could practically see him debating whether to shut this down completely. Instead, he exhaled slowly through his nose. You make this difficult. Pretty sure it's mutual. Another pause. Then his phone buzzed on the counter, breaking whatever was happening between us. Easton glanced at the screen, and his expression changed instantly. Not angry. Not upset. Closed off. He grabbed the phone quickly and typed a response. I looked away automatically, suddenly feeling like I'd intruded on something private. You good? I asked. Yeah. Too fast. He shoved the phone into his pocket. And just like that, the atmosphere changed completely. I noticed it immediately. Easton became quieter while we cleaned up. Distracted. Like part of him had left the room already. By the time we reached the front entrance, rain still pouring outside, he barely looked at me. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. Yeah. But something felt off now. I could tell he knew it too. That night, he didn't text me, which shouldn't have mattered. Except I'd gotten used to seeing his name on my screen before bed. Midnight passed. Then 1. Nothing. I hated how disappointed I felt. The next day at the gym, Easton acted normal. Too normal. Professional. Friendly. Careful. He corrected my form during lunges without teasing me once. Honestly, it was worse. After class, while everyone else grabbed their stuff, I stayed behind again. Easton was wiping down benches near the mirrors. "You're avoiding me," I said. His hand stopped moving for half a second before continuing. "I'm working." "Easton." He finally looked at me then. And there it was again, that tension in his expression, like he was holding something back with both hands. "I'm trying to be smart," he said quietly. "About what?" "You." The word landed directly in my chest. I stepped closer before I could think better of it. "We haven't even done anything." "That's exactly the problem." I frowned. "That makes zero sense." Easton looked exhausted suddenly. "Jace," he said softly, "if I let myself do what I want right now, I'm not sure I'd stop at harmless texting." That completely destroyed my ability to think normally. Neither of us moved. The gym suddenly felt way too quiet around us. "What do you want?" I asked before I lost my nerve. His jaw tightened immediately. Then he laughed once under his breath, like he couldn't believe I'd asked him that directly. "You really don't make this easy." "I'm serious." "I know." Another long silence stretched between us. Then Easton looked at me in a way he never had before. Openly. No pretending. No careful professionalism. Just honest want. "You," he admitted quietly. My pulse went completely unstable. And right then, from somewhere near the lobby, someone shouted his name. Easton closed his eyes briefly, like the universe itself was testing him. When he looked back at me, his expression had gone careful again. "We should stop this conversation. Do you want to?" "No," he said immediately. That answer hit harder than anything else. Then he stepped backward toward the lobby. "Go home, Jace." I stared at him for another second. "You texted me first, by the way." That got the smallest smile out of him. "Yeah," he said softly. "That was probably my first mistake." And somehow that line stayed in my head the entire night. After that conversation, Easton disappeared for 2 days. Not literally. He still worked at the gym, still coached classes, still moved through the building with that same calm confidence that made everyone automatically trust him. But with me, it was like someone had pulled an invisible wall between us overnight. No late-night texts, no teasing comments, no lingering eye contact, nothing. And it drove me insane. By Friday, I was irritated enough to stop pretending I didn't notice. I arrived late to conditioning class on purpose, half expecting Easton not to care anymore. Instead, the second I walked in, his eyes found me immediately. There it was again. That look. The one that said he was trying very hard not to feel something. "Nice of you to join us," he said evenly. "Traffic. You live 10 minutes away." I dropped my gym bag beside the wall. "You stalking me now?" A couple people laughed. Easton didn't. But I caught the corner of his mouth twitching before he looked away again. The workout was brutal. Not accidentally brutal either. Every exercise felt targeted directly at me. Again. I did it. "You complained through half the set. You're punishing me emotionally." "You survived." "Barely." At one point during partner drills, Easton came up behind me to adjust my stance. His hand pressed briefly against my side. That was it. One touch. But my entire brain short-circuited instantly. I could feel him noticing it too, because his hand disappeared almost immediately afterward. "Keep your balance," he said quietly near my ear. Then he stepped away before I could even respond. The rest of class felt impossible after that. When it finally ended, everyone slowly filtered out while I stayed behind, wiping sweat off my face with my shirt. Easton was near the front desk typing something into the computer. I stared at him for a second too long before speaking. "Are you going to keep acting weird?" He didn't even look up. "Define weird." "You know exactly what I mean." Now he looked at me. Calm expression. Guarded eyes. "I'm acting normal." That's the problem. Something shifted in his face at that. He glanced toward the empty gym floor before walking around the counter toward me. "You want honesty?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "I'm trying to create distance because every time you're around me lately, I forget why I'm supposed to." The bluntness of that hit me hard enough that I forgot how to answer for a second. Easton noticed. "You think this is easy for me?" he continued. "Because it's not. Then stop fighting it." He laughed softly under his breath, but there was no humor in it. "You're 24 and impulsive. And you're acting like we're committing crimes. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He looked at me for a long moment. And suddenly he seemed tired more than anything else. "Tension," he admitted quietly. "Bad timing. Complicated boundaries." The phrase bad timing stuck immediately. What does that mean? His jaw tightened the second I asked. There it was again. That hesitation. The same one from the phone call earlier that week. I felt my stomach drop before he even answered. There's someone? I asked carefully. Easton looked away, which was answer enough. For a second, neither of us spoke. The gym suddenly felt too bright, too open, too real. It's serious? I asked. No. That answer came fast. Then slower, more honest. Not anymore. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice even. You have a boyfriend? Easton rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. It's complicated. I almost laughed at that. Of course it was. Every man I ever liked came with the word complicated attached somewhere. How complicated? I asked quietly. He met my eyes again then. And whatever he saw on my face made something in his expression soften immediately. Jace. That bad, huh? No, he stepped closer automatically. It's just messy. I folded my arms tightly across my chest. You probably should have mentioned that before telling me you wanted me. I know. The honesty in that somehow made it worse. Easton looked genuinely frustrated with himself now. We were already falling apart before you, he admitted. I'm not cheating on anyone. But you're also not single. Silence. That was the real answer. I looked away first. For some reason, disappointment hit harder than anger. Because part of me had started imagining this too clearly already. The rides home. The texts. The looks. I'd let myself believe it meant something uncomplicated. Stupid. I should go, I muttered. Jace. No, it's fine. It's not fine. I grabbed my bag off the floor. Then why does it feel like I walked into something halfway broken? That landed. Easton's entire posture shifted like I'd said exactly the thing he'd been avoiding hearing out loud. For a second, he looked like he wanted to explain everything. Instead, he just said quietly, because you probably did. That should have made me leave immediately. Instead, I stood there staring at him while my chest felt painfully tight. Because the worst part? I could still tell he wanted me anyway. And apparently, so did I. I tried avoiding Easton after that, which would have been easier if he wasn't suddenly everywhere. Every time I entered the gym, I noticed him immediately now, talking to clients near the treadmills, spotting someone at the squat rack, laughing at the front desk with other trainers. And every single time, some stupid part of me still reacted before my brain could catch up. The worst part was knowing I shouldn't want him anymore. Not because he was a bad person. That almost made it harder. Easton hadn't lied to me exactly. He'd hesitated, avoided details, tried to pull away before things crossed lines. But he still crossed them anyway. And apparently so did I. 3 days passed with barely any real conversation between us. The text stopped completely. Conditioning class felt colder now too. Easton stayed professional to the point of exhaustion. He corrected form, timed drills, encouraged people evenly, but he barely looked directly at me anymore. By Monday night, I was angry enough to snap. Class had just ended when I cornered him near the storage room while everyone else headed out. You can stop pretending I don't exist now. Easton shut the storage locker harder than necessary before looking at me. That's not what I'm doing. Really? Because this whole emotionally unavailable gym coach thing is getting old fast. His eyes narrowed slightly. You think I'm enjoying this? I think you're avoiding dealing with it. Silence. Then he exhaled sharply through his nose. You want to know the truth? He asked quietly. Yes. The truth is I haven't slept properly in a week because every time I see you, I want things I shouldn't. That completely knocked the anger out of me for half a second. Easton stepped closer before continuing. And the other truth is that my relationship's been dead for months. We barely speak unless it turns into an argument. I swallowed hard. So leave. The words came out before I could stop them. Easton stared at me immediately. It's not that simple. Why not? His jaw tightened. Because 6 years with someone doesn't disappear overnight. 6 years. That number hit me harder than I expected. Not casual. Not temporary. Real history. And suddenly I hated the ache in my chest because it made me feel selfish. I'm not asking you to destroy your life, I said more quietly now. I know. Then what are we doing? That question hung heavily between us. Easton looked exhausted again, torn in a way that felt painfully genuine. I don't know, he admitted. For a second, neither of us moved. Then from somewhere near the front desk, another trainer called his name. Easton closed his eyes briefly. I have to go. Of course you do. That came out sharper than I intended. He looked back at me immediately. Jace. But I already grabbed my bag. I'll see you around, coach. I regretted the line instantly because of the look that crossed his face afterward, like I'd shoved distance between us on purpose. Maybe I had. That night, I finally did something smart. I muted his messages. Not blocked, just muted, because seeing his name light up my screen had become dangerous. Around midnight, my phone buzzed anyway. Then again. Then a third time. I stared at the ceiling for a full minute before finally checking. Easton, you left angry. Easton, I don't want that. Then, Easton, can we talk somewhere that isn't the gym? My chest tightened immediately. I shouldn't have answered. Instead, me. About what? The typing bubble appeared instantly. Easton, us. That single word completely ruined my ability to think rationally. I stared at it way too long before replying. Me. There is no us. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. Easton. That's probably the problem. I didn't answer after that. Mostly because I didn't know how. The next day, I skipped the gym entirely. And somehow that felt worse. By evening, I was restless enough to go for a walk just to stop thinking about him. Which obviously failed. Everything reminded me of Easton now. A black pickup truck at a red light. A gym playlist playing through open restaurant doors. Someone laughing with the same low voice he had. It was pathetic. Around 9, my phone buzzed again. Easton, you disappeared today. I kept walking. Another message came before I could decide whether to respond. Easton, I'm outside your apartment. I stopped dead on the sidewalk. My pulse immediately spiked. Me. Why? This time the reply took longer. Easton, because I'm tired of trying not to come see you. I actually closed my eyes for a second after reading that. Dangerous. That was the word for him now. Still, 20 minutes later, I was standing downstairs outside my building wearing a hoodie and trying not to look nervous. Easton leaned against his truck under a streetlight, hands shoved into the pockets of a dark jacket. The second he saw me, his expression changed. Softer somehow, like he'd been tense until I appeared. You came down, he said quietly. You're impossible to ignore. That got the faintest smile out of him. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Easton rubbed a hand across his jaw and looked away briefly. I ended things tonight. The world seemed to pause around me. What? He met my eyes again. We were holding on to something that already ended a long time ago, he said quietly. I should have stopped pretending before you ever got dragged into this. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt relieved instantly. Another part felt guilty for feeling relieved. You don't have to look that horrified, Easton murmured. I'm not horrified. You're thinking too hard. Unfortunately, he was right. I looked down at the pavement for a second before asking carefully, Are you okay? And something about that question visibly affected him. Because suddenly Easton looked less like the confident trainer everyone admired and more like a tired man standing outside my apartment trying to hold himself together. Not really, he admitted softly. That honesty cracked something open inside me immediately. Without thinking, I stepped closer. Not touching him. Just close enough that the distance between us suddenly felt charged again. Easton looked down at me slowly. You should probably tell me to leave, he said quietly. Probably. Neither of us moved. The city noise faded into the background. Cars passing somewhere nearby. Cold night air between us. Then Easton said the one thing that completely destroyed whatever restraint I still had left. I kept trying to stay away from you, he admitted. And every single time, I ended up outside your apartment instead. And honestly, that might have been the exact moment I realized I was already too far gone. Easton kissed me for the first time 2 nights later. Not outside my apartment. Not in the gym parking lot. Not during one of those emotionally reckless late-night conversations we kept having. It happened in the most normal place possible. A grocery store, which honestly felt appropriate for us somehow. We've been texting constantly again after the night he ended things. Not careful texting either. Real conversations now. About music. About sleep schedules. About his childhood in northern Michigan. About the fact that I apparently survived entirely on caffeine and protein bars before he started micromanaging my life. Easton, have you eaten vegetables today? Me. That feels invasive. Easton, that's not a yes. And somewhere inside all that, the tension between us stopped pretending to be subtle anymore. By Thursday, Easton finally asked me to dinner directly. No weird phrasing. No ambiguity. Easton, let me take you out. I stared at that message for a solid 30 seconds before answering. Me? You mean like an actual date? Easton, yeah, those exist. The smile that hit my face was embarrassing. Dinner itself felt surprisingly easy. That was the dangerous part. I expected awkwardness after everything. Complicated emotions. Guilt hanging over the table. Instead, it felt like relief. Like we'd both gotten tired of pretending this wasn't happening already. We stayed at the restaurant nearly 3 hours. Easton talked more outside the gym too. Not louder, just more open. I learned he used to play hockey in college before a shoulder injury ruined it. That he secretly loved terrible reality TV. That he got quiet whenever conversations drifted toward family. You dodge personal questions professionally. I told him while we walked back toward his truck afterward. Easton smirked slightly. Occupational hazard. No, seriously. You always redirect. Not always. I looked at him knowingly. You literally just changed the subject twice. That's because you ask invasive questions. I asked if your parents live nearby. Exactly. I laughed hard enough that he finally smiled fully. God, that smile was becoming a problem. After dinner, neither of us seemed ready to end the night yet. So somehow we ended up wandering through a 24-hour grocery store, buying absolutely nothing important. Easton pushed the cart with one hand while I tossed random snacks into it just to annoy him. You don't need those, he said as I grabbed sour candy. You can't stop me. I literally can. You abuse authority constantly. He shook his head like I exhausted him. But he was smiling again. That was the thing I noticed most around him now. Easton smiled more with me. Not the polite gym version. Not the controlled, calm trainer expression. Real smiles. Tired ones. Soft ones. The kind that changed his whole face. At some point near the frozen food aisle, I caught him looking at me. Not casually either. Openly. And suddenly the entire atmosphere shifted. I slowed beside the cart. What? I asked quietly. Easton blinked once like I'd caught him doing something dangerous. Nothing. You're staring. That's because you're wearing that sweatshirt again. I looked down automatically. What's wrong with my sweatshirt? Nothing. His voice dropped slightly. I just like it on you. That completely disrupted my ability to act normal. Easton noticed immediately. A faint smile pulled at his mouth before he looked away toward the shelves again. You blush easily, he murmured. Oh my God. It's interesting. You're enjoying this way too much. Probably. I grabbed a random cereal box off the shelf and threw it lightly into the cart just to avoid looking directly at him. But the feeling stayed there. That pull between us. Heavy now. Undeniable. By the time we reached the parking lot, my pulse already felt unstable again. Cold air hit us immediately as the automatic doors slid shut behind us. Easton loaded the bags into the truck slowly while I stood nearby, pretending my brain still worked normally. You cold? He asked. A little. Without hesitation, he stepped closer and pulled the sleeves of my hoodie down over my hands slightly. The gesture was so small, so casual, and somehow it completely wrecked me. Easton must have realized it too because his eyes lifted slowly to mine afterward. Neither of us moved. The parking lot suddenly felt very quiet. You keep looking at me like that? I said softly. And I'm going to stop making responsible decisions. His jaw tightened immediately. Jace. What? That's not helping. I swallowed hard. Maybe I don't want to help. That did it. I saw the exact second his restraint snapped. Easton stepped forward quickly enough that my back nearly hit the side of the truck. Then he stopped himself. Still careful. Still giving me space to back away. You sure? He asked quietly. The fact that he asked at all made my chest ache a little. Instead of answering immediately, I reached for the front of his jacket lightly. That was enough. Easton kissed me like he'd been holding himself back for weeks. One hand against the truck beside my head. The other brushing briefly against my side before pulling away again like he was trying not to overwhelm me. And somehow that restraint made it worse. Because I could feel how badly he wanted me anyway. The kiss itself wasn't rushed. It was careful at first, then less careful. Warm. Deep enough to make my knees feel unreliable. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke immediately. Easton rested his forehead briefly against mine, breathing unevenly. Well, he murmured quietly. I laughed softly, still completely dazed. That sounded emotionally significant. You have no idea. The honesty in his voice made my stomach flip. For a second we just stood there beside the truck staring at each other like something irreversible had finally happened. Which, honestly, it probably had. Then Easton brushed his thumb lightly against my wrist and gave me a look that felt dangerously close to affection already. You know, he said softly, I spent a month trying not to do that. I smiled before I could stop myself. And his eyes stayed on mine. Worst month of my life. After the kiss, everything between us changed immediately. Not dramatically. Almost worse than that. Naturally. That was the dangerous part. Easton started showing up at my apartment without pretending he needed a reason anymore. Sometimes after late classes. Sometimes just because he happened to be nearby, which was complete nonsense because he lived 20 minutes in the opposite direction. And every single time, I let him in. One Friday night, he arrived carrying takeout and 2 protein shakes like some deeply repressed version of a boyfriend. "You brought supplements to my apartment," I said as he walked past me into the kitchen. "You eat like a raccoon behind a gas station." That feels judgmental. It's accurate. I watched him unpack food containers across my counter like he belonged there already. And honestly, that realization should have scared me more than it did. Because Easton fit into my life suspiciously well. Too well. We ate on the couch, while some random movie played in the background neither of us actually cared about. At some point, Easton stretched one arm along the back of the couch behind me casually. Not possessive, not hesitant either. Just comfortable. And somehow that felt more intimate than the kissing. "You're staring again," I murmured without looking away from the TV. "I know. You're really bad at denying things. I stopped trying with you a while ago." That line hit me directly in the chest. I finally looked over at him. Big mistake. Easton was already watching me with that same expression he'd had in the grocery store parking lot. Soft, focused, dangerously affectionate. "What?" I asked quietly. He shook his head once like he couldn't believe something. "You make my apartment feel quiet." The words caught me completely off guard. What does that even mean? Easton looked down briefly before answering. "I spend all day around noise. Clients. Music. People wanting things from me." His eyes lifted back to mine slowly. "Then I come here, and my brain finally shuts up for a minute." Something deep in my chest twisted painfully at that. Because he sounded so sincere. And tired. Without thinking too hard about it, I shifted closer to him on the couch. Easton noticed immediately. His hand moved from the back cushion to my wrist slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. The movie continued playing unnoticed in the background while the atmosphere between us grew heavier by the second. "You know what's weird?" I said softly. "What?" "You're way less intimidating outside the gym." That made him laugh quietly. "Intimidating? You literally walk around ordering people to suffer for an hour." "Fair. And everyone listens to you automatically." Easton tilted his head slightly. "You don't. That's because bothering you became my favorite hobby." His thumb brushed lightly across my wrist once. "You're very good at it." The air between us shifted again after that. Slower this time. More dangerous somehow. Easton's eyes dropped briefly toward my mouth before returning upward. Then he exhaled quietly like he was losing an argument with himself. "Jace." Just hearing my name in that tone made my pulse jump. "What?" "You have to tell me if this is moving too fast." The concern in his voice almost hurt. Because I could tell he genuinely meant it. I shook my head immediately. "It's not." Easton studied my face carefully like he was checking whether I was just saying what he wanted to hear. Apparently satisfied, he reached up slowly and brushed his fingers briefly along my jaw. The gesture was so gentle it completely disarmed me. "You think too much," he murmured softly. "That's rich coming from you." A faint smile appeared. Then he kissed me again. Slower this time. Less restrained. The kind of kiss that made the room around us disappear completely. At some point, the movie ended without either of us noticing. Then another started automatically. Neither of us paid attention to that one either. Eventually, Easton pulled back just enough to rest his forehead lightly against mine. "I should probably go home," he murmured. "You've been saying that for an hour." "I'm trying to be responsible." "That sounds fake." He laughed softly against my shoulder. And for a second, everything felt easy. Simple. Until Easton's phone buzzed on the coffee table. The shift in him happened instantly. Subtle, but immediate. I felt his body tense before he even looked at the screen. Then he sighed quietly. "What?" I asked. Easton picked up the phone, glanced at the message, then locked the screen again without replying. "Nothing." That didn't look like nothing. He leaned back into the couch slowly. "My ex." There it was. Reality again. I tried to keep my expression neutral. "Still talking?" Unfortunately, something uncomfortable settled in my chest immediately. Not jealousy exactly. Just uncertainty. Easton noticed. "Hey." His voice softened instantly. "It's not like that." "How is it?" He rubbed a tired hand across his face before answering. "We were together a long time." Untangling everything takes time too. I nodded slowly, even though part of me hated hearing that. Easton studied my face carefully. You want to know the truth? Probably. The truth is I haven't wanted to answer those texts since the night outside your apartment. That helped. More than it should have. Still, I asked quietly. Then why does it feel like you're somewhere else when your phone goes off? Easton stared at me for a second after that. Then something in his expression shifted. Understanding. You're scared I'm not really done, he said softly. I looked away immediately, which was apparently answer enough. Easton moved closer again, without hesitation. Jace. I felt his fingers lightly tilt my chin back toward him. I need you to hear me clearly right now, he said quietly. I ended that relationship because it was already over. Not because of guilt. Not because I got caught up in something temporary. His eyes held mine steadily. And definitely not because I plan on going back. The sincerity in his voice completely wrecked me. I swallowed hard. Okay. You believe me? The fact that he cared enough to ask made my chest ache again. Yeah, I admitted quietly. I do. Easton relaxed visibly after that. Then he smiled slightly and brushed his thumb once against my jaw. Good. And somehow, sitting there in my dim apartment with his hand still against my face, I realized something terrifying. I was already falling for him. For real this time. Falling for Easton changed the gym completely. Before him, it had been routine. Now every workout felt loaded with meaning. A glance across the room could ruin my concentration for 20 minutes. One quiet, good job from him after a difficult set stayed in my head all day. It was ridiculous. And apparently obvious. You're smiling at your phone like someone in a bad romantic comedy, Nolan said one afternoon while we grabbed coffee after work. I immediately locked my screen. I'm literally just texting. With who? No one. That's a lie. Unfortunately, it absolutely was. Because the message on my screen had been, Easton, you skipped stretching again, didn't you? Me. Maybe. Easton, I'm dating a disaster. The word dating had hit me hard enough that I'd reread the message 4 times already. Not because we hadn't technically been dating. We had. But neither of us had said it out loud before. And apparently one casual text from Easton was enough to make me feel like my entire nervous system short-circuited. You're gone, Nolan said, staring at me suspiciously. Oh my God. You actually like someone. I grabbed my coffee immediately. This conversation's over. He pointed at me. That's a yes. I didn't answer. Mostly because I couldn't stop thinking about Easton calling me his. That night, I arrived at the gym later than usual. Easton was helping a client near the cable machines when I walked in. The second he noticed me, his expression changed automatically. Subtle, but immediate. Like his body recognized me before his brain caught up. And for some reason, that tiny unconscious reaction affected me more than anything else lately. I spent most of my workout trying not to stare at him. Failed completely. Around closing time, I was refilling my water bottle when Easton appeared beside me. You're distracted tonight. You're distracting. That sounds like a personal problem. I smiled despite myself. Then Easton leaned one shoulder lightly against the counter beside me, lowering his voice slightly. You doing anything after this? The way he asked immediately shifted the atmosphere between us. Depends. On how convincing your invitation is. A faint smile pulled at his mouth. Come over. Simple. Direct. Dangerous. Your place? I asked. Easton nodded once. I'd never been there before. For some reason, that suddenly felt important. Easton must have noticed the hesitation on my face because his expression softened immediately. You don't have to if it feels weird. No, I said quickly. I want to. And judging by the look in his eyes afterward, that answer mattered to him more than he expected. His apartment was exactly what I imagined somehow. Clean without feeling staged. Dark furniture. A massive gray couch. Too many protein containers in the kitchen. You really live like this voluntarily? I asked while looking around. Easton tossed his keys onto the counter. You own 3 hoodies that all look identical. That's different. How? It's fashion. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. The entire place felt unmistakably him though. Calm. Controlled. A little emotionally repressed. Which honestly made sense. This is weirdly nice, I admitted. Easton glanced over from the kitchen. You expected me to live like a raccoon? I expected less decorative lighting. That's offensive. I wandered slowly through the living room while he grabbed drinks from the fridge. Then I noticed a framed photo sitting partially hidden near the bookshelf. Easton with another guy. Not romantic in the picture itself. Just close. Comfortable. Familiar. But I knew immediately who it was. And unfortunately, the ache in my chest appeared just as fast. Easton followed my line of sight instantly. The shift in his expression was immediate. Jace, I'm fine. You're very obviously not. I looked away from the photo quickly. Sorry, that was stupid. Easton set the drinks down on the counter harder than necessary before walking over. It's not stupid. I folded my arms tightly across my chest. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Easton reached past me, picked up the frame, and quietly turned it face down on the shelf. The gesture surprised me enough that I looked up immediately. You don't have to do that. I want to. There was no hesitation in his voice, just certainty, and somehow that made the jealousy twisting in my chest feel even worse. Because I hated how much I cared already. Easton must have seen some part of that on my face because his expression softened again instantly. Hey. His voice dropped lower now. Gentler. You want to know something honest? I nodded once. I haven't looked at that picture in weeks. His eyes stayed on mine steadily. But I've thought about you every day. That completely destroyed my ability to respond normally. Easton stepped closer slowly, not crowding me, just near enough that I could feel warmth radiating from him. I know this is messy timing, he admitted quietly, and I know you're trying not to get hurt. His jaw tightened slightly. But you need to understand something. What? When I'm with you, he said softly. Nothing about this feels confusing anymore. The sincerity in his voice hit me so hard it almost scared me. Because suddenly I realized this wasn't casual for him either. Not anymore. I looked down briefly, trying to steady my breathing. That's a really dangerous thing to say to someone who already likes you too much. Easton laughed quietly under his breath. Then his hand slid gently against my waist for the first time. Not hesitant. Not rushed. Just intentional. You think you're the only one with that problem? He murmured. And honestly, that might have been the exact moment I fell completely in love with him. The first time Easton told someone about me, I almost missed it, which felt fitting somehow. It happened on a Wednesday night after class. The gym was quieter than usual, most people already gone, music low through the speakers while I wiped down equipment near the free weights. Easton was at the front desk talking to another trainer named Marcus. I wasn't paying attention at first. Then I heard my name. Jace already finished the programming adjustments, Easton said casually. Marcus looked over toward me immediately. That your guy? My heart stopped for one terrifying second. Not because of the question, because of what Easton might say next. He didn't hesitate. Yeah, he answered simply. My guy. Two completely normal words. And somehow they hit harder than anything else he'd said to me lately. Marcus nodded like it was the least surprising thing in the world and kept talking about schedules. Meanwhile, I stood there holding disinfectant spray like my brain had fully disconnected from my body. Easton glanced toward me briefly afterward. Just one look. But I could tell immediately that he knew exactly what he'd done. The annoying part? He looked calm about it. Later, after Marcus left, I walked over trying very hard to sound unaffected. You trying to kill me psychologically now? Easton leaned against the counter. What did I do? You know what you did. A faint smile appeared immediately. Maybe. I stared at him. That was evil. You're dramatic. You call me your guy. Easton's expression softened almost invisibly after hearing me say it out loud. Yeah, he said quietly. I did. And just like that, my ability to function disappeared again. God, this man was a problem. The relationship, because apparently that's what it had become, now settled into something strangely real after that. Not perfect. Not cinematic. Just real. Easton started keeping a spare hoodie at my apartment because he was there so often. I started leaving protein bars in my kitchen specifically because he complained when I didn't eat enough between work and workouts. One Sunday morning, I woke up to find him standing barefoot in my kitchen making coffee. The sight hit me so hard emotionally it actually annoyed me. You're smiling at me again, he said without turning around. I'm judging your coffee technique. You watched me for 10 straight seconds. I was gathering evidence. Easton laughed quietly. Then he handed me a mug automatically before leaning against the counter beside me. Still half asleep. Hair messy. Wearing one of my hoodies now instead of his own. It felt painfully domestic. And apparently he noticed me noticing because his expression softened immediately. What? He asked. I shook my head once. Nothing. Liar. Unfortunately, he knew me too well already. I stared down into my coffee before speaking quietly. You make normal things feel important. The silence after that felt different. Heavier somehow. When I finally looked up, Easton was watching me carefully. Jace. Something about the tone of his voice made my pulse jump immediately. What? He set his mug down slowly on the counter beside him, then stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel warmth against my chest now. I need to tell you something before I lose my nerve. Every thought in my head disappeared instantly. Easton looked nervous. Actually nervous. I'd never seen that before. You're scaring me a little, I admitted softly. That made him smile briefly. Sorry. Then the smile faded again. And suddenly he looked completely open in a way that almost hurt to see. I think I started falling for you the night I drove you home in the rain, he admitted quietly. My entire chest tightened immediately. Easton kept going before I could interrupt. I knew it was a bad idea. A soft laugh escaped him. You were sitting in my truck arguing with me about music like we'd known each other for years already. I couldn't even breathe properly at this point. And after that, he continued more quietly now. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was you. The honesty in his voice completely wrecked me. I stared at him for a second too long before asking softly, You seriously fell for me because I bullied your playlists? That was part of it. I laughed helplessly, but my eyes already felt suspiciously warm. Easton noticed immediately. His expression softened even further. Hey, you can't just say things like that casually. I've been trying not to say them for months. That line hit even harder. Then silence settled between us again. Not awkward, just full. Easton lifted one hand slowly and brushed his fingers lightly against my jaw. I know the timing was messy, he said quietly. And I know I didn't handle everything perfectly. His eyes stayed locked on mine. But meeting you changed something in me. The sincerity in his voice scared me a little, because I believed every word. I stepped closer without thinking. You changed something in me too, I admitted softly. Easton closed his eyes briefly, like hearing that physically affected him. Then he rested his forehead gently against mine. And for a second, the entire world felt very quiet again, just like he said it did whenever he was with me. You know what the worst part is? I murmured. What? I almost quit that gym before I met you. Easton pulled back just enough to look at me properly again. A slow smile appeared afterward. Yeah, he said softly. Me too.